This is a picture of a pyramid. And this is the sole reason why your SAT score is below a 1500 right now. Okay? That's crazy, I know. What does a pyramid have to do with your SAT score? Well, it actually boils down to something quite simple. Alright? And that is building your foundation. Okay, now I'm not talking about going back and doing addition, subtraction, like elementary school stuff, right? That is not what the foundation we're talking about. And for many of you, maybe you have great fundamentals, okay? And this will explain it right here. All right, let's see what is exactly wrong right now that's preventing you from getting your dream score or getting your target score. First off, if you're scoring under 1,000, you have true foundational gaps, right? Like you grew up and you went through the education system and there were things that you were just not taught. Okay, now that you're taking the SAT, you're gonna have to go back and revisit those concepts, right? Actually learn them from scratch. Now, if you're someone who's scoring between 1,000 and 1,300, you have an inconsistent foundation. That means when you learn certain concepts, it was very spotty, right? It was very shaky. Maybe your teacher taught you a very formulatic way, taught you to a test, a state exam, whatever. But now you're screwed because you got the SAT, right? But you just go back, brush up on those concepts. There's tons of videos on YouTube covering the actual content for that topic that you definitely want to go back on. But for tons of you out there who are watching this video, you are stuck. You are stuck between the 1,300 and the 1,500 SAT range. This score bracket is very frustrating, especially if you're in the 1,400s, because as you go up, it is harder, progressively more difficult to improve your SAT score because the margins get more slim. All right, like at the top, if you're missing like one or two questions, you're gonna get docked tons of points, right? Versus if you start off with like 1,000 SAT score, you could just not do anything. You could play video games all night. The very next day, take the SAT and jump up 100 points, right? That doesn't work if you're scoring like a 1350. You're not going to magically score 1450 the next day, all right? So what is the secret sauce that if you're scoring under 1,500 SAT, but you're scoring above 1,300 SAT, what do you need to do in order to score a 1,500 SAT? Well, it's actually kind of simple, okay? And I have two questions that will demonstrate this. You see this question? This is a very common SAT question. Okay, there are some questions that are a bit easier than this. I should say much easier than this on Module 1. But most questions that you get that might cause you some difficulty or something along those lines, this is the most common type of question you're going to see on the SAT, right? Not this exact type of problem, but this sort of difficulty, pretty straightforward for some people depending on your skill level, right? But the point is, for questions like these, right, where it's not like groundbreaking, OMG, I've never seen this, solve 10 of these questions for every one of these questions you saw. Now, maybe this isn't the most crazy question you've ever seen. You've done something harder. But my point is, for every one of those crazy hard SAT questions that you solve, you should be solving 10 of the easy medium questions. Okay? And why is this? Well, this is because the SAT is mainly consisted of those easy and medium questions. Okay? And this is where we get into the idea of the SAT dip. Okay? If you are still making mistakes on the simpler questions in Module 1, and even in Module 2, there are easy, I want to say easy classified by College Board, but in comparison to the types of difficult questions you might see or practice for, there are some pretty medium difficulty questions in the beginning of Module 2 Math or Module 2 English, right? So, because of that, if you are making mistakes on those sections, you should not be training for the hardest questions ever, or just going on YouTube searching up the hardest SAT questions. By solving those questions, it makes you feel good. Okay, it basically feeds your ego because you're solving the hardest questions, right? And if you happen to get one of them right, it makes you feel good. You feel like you're accomplished. You feel like you're learning. You feel like you're preparing for something hard. Versus the boring stuff, the stuff that's not as flashy or sexy, right? Actually just sitting down and like doing the monotonous, repetitive problems. But doing that, the action of doing that will make sure that you do not miss those questions on test day. And the majority of the SAT exam are those questions. Okay, the SAT is scaled. So if you miss something like an easy medium question, right, you can lose more points than if you miss something that was a hard question classified by College Board. And this diagram perfectly sums it up. Okay, if you're doing those monotonous problems, and I should say this actually, if you're doing those monotonous problems, you're actually getting to the point of diminishing returns. Right, this is diminishing returns, monotonous problems. If you're actually learning the concepts, that is essentially the fundamental, most productive way to actually increase your score alongside test taking strategies. If you're grinding the most difficult questions while you still are missing those simpler questions, that is negative returns. That is hurting your score. That is why you are under a 1500 SAT. Okay? So, another thing, this is the last caveat here before we end the video, is talking about pretest questions. These are experimental questions that the SAT puts in because they want data, right? They want to see, is this question hard? Is this question medium? Most of the time, they're going to be pretty hard because they're like new concepts that they just like put in a blender and mix up, and it's something crazy, right? So because of that, these pretest questions are more likely to be hard. So if you get a question on the SAT that you're stuck on, it's probably a pretest question, don't waste your time on it. And that's exactly why you shouldn't be spending your time on these crazy questions. You don't have to get all the hard questions correct in order to get 1500 SAT. The only point that you should be focusing on strictly these hard questions is if you meet these following criteria. You're not making any mistakes on Module 1. If you do make mistakes on Module 2, you're not making the same mistakes from practice test to practice test. It's very important that you go through and review your practice tests. And also, if you happen to finish Module 2 early consistently, and you're finding that you're actually stuck in those 1 or 2 hard questions afterwards that you review, then that is a signal that you should probably be focusing on strictly the hard questions. And also, if you're subscribed to PrepWorks, I'm going to be coming out with tons of more SAT and college admissions videos in the future. You definitely do not want to miss those. I'll catch you guys in the next video.